Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 2, Episode 12, Awakened. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of exactly what happens within this episode. So a lot happened in this episode. A lot. It starts with Phoebe informing Piper that she has gotten into college and is now a student. We then find out that Piper has been ill for a few days. We then have Piper passing out. We then have Piper almost dying. And because the illness is so bad, we have Prue and Phoebe calling on Leo to heal her, who is not allowed to heal her. So they decide to cast a personal gain spell in order to save Piper's life. The spell works. We then have them, as a consequence of the personal gain spell, spreading Piper's disease to multiple patients. I believe it's mentioned in the episode that 6 others come down with the same illness that she had, due to the puppet that they used being a ninja doll that has a pointy sword that has been going around and infecting people with the disease via the sword at the hospital. We then have them getting quarantined altogether as the doctors try to figure out how Piper is cured, but how a non-contagious disease is suddenly becoming contagious. Which is when Prue then astral projects long distance back to the attic to get the reversal spell, and Piper decides that she won't be responsible for the lives of the innocents, that if it's her time, it's her time, and that there isn't really a magical out for her. And so Prue gets the spell, comes back, they chant the spell, and Piper then falls ill again and ends up dying temporarily. Her ghost leaves her body. She ends up in the Sunset Realm, which I would imagine is like the between worlds. And from what looks like the sun, out walks Leo, who says that at this point, this in between, it's the only chance he has to try to heal her without the elders knowing, and that he cannot lose her. And so he then heals her soul, which then returns to her body. And when she wakes up, she says Leo's name, which Dan overhears. And then later at the club, she is then basically waiting for Dan to arrive. But Phoebe and Prue let her know that because Dan heard Leo's name, that's why he hasn't shown up yet. And then who should be walking into the club but Leo himself? And Leo informs her that he was not able to get away with healing her in secret, that the elders found out, and that his wings have been clipped, so he is now a mortal, just like Dan, and that he had always hoped that that would mean that he would get a second chance with Piper. And Piper basically says she's with Dan now, and he says he knows that, but that he is willing to fight for her, and may the better man win. Meanwhile, while this is ongoing, we have Prue's little side quest, which is essentially a painting comes into Buckland's that she is authenticating with Jack, and it is found out that it is not a Monet painting, but a painting done by one of Monet's students, and so she in good conscience cannot authenticate it as a Monet painting. However, Jack, who she's been in a relationship of sorts with, is willing to pretend it's a Monet, and so is her boss, and this ultimately leads her to quitting Buckland's, looking for a change, and also breaking up with Jack at the end of the episode, also looking for a change, taking what happened to Piper as a bit of a wake-up call that something in her that her life isn't fulfilling and that she needs to move on. Now that we've been reminded about what happens on this episode, or within this episode, it's time to rank the episode against the other episodes within this season. A reminder that we rank on two lists, a mostly objective ranking list, which bias and judgment still apply, but no emotion, and then the personal ranking list in which emotion is what applies. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, a lot has happened in this episode, which means that there are a lot of points and chart values that apply to this episode. So starting off, we have our single episode supporting character introduction, and that is Nathan. Nathan is a boy who is at the hospital that Phoebe meets while she is waiting for information on Piper's condition. He tells us that, he's ill. She sees his toy ninja and basically tells him that the toy ninja is a wizard and that it's going to fight off whatever is wrong with him in his body. And basically then later on, she meets Nathan again and he tells her that it worked and that feels way better and that he is going to be discharged in a couple of days after they've monitored his condition to make sure the progress is real. And Phoebe, when they need a poppet for the awakening spell that they use to cure Piper, she goes to Nathan to ask for the ninja, and he tells her, of course, that she can keep it because he doesn't need it anymore, as the wizard, as mentioned, has already done his job. So he is important to the plot as he is what provides the poppet. And also there is a brief moment where just before they do the reversal spell, the poppet is about to infect Nathan, and because he is a child, that was a tense moment because we did not want that to happen, and thankfully it did not. Next up, we have our multi-episode supporting character introduction, which is Dr. Curtis Williamson. And he is a character that is very much one of the doctors that's in it for reasons besides helping people. He wants a paper and his name published, and when the disease, at first he's helping Piper, he prescribes one set of antibiotics, it doesn't work, and then he's like, okay, well, she's gonna have to die. Nothing more we can do. That's why the sisters then cast the spell. He then is in awe of Piper's miraculous recovery and wants to study that. And of course, when 6 other people start falling sick, then he takes that as his opportunity to become famous and lead the charge on this obviously mutating illness because it wasn't supposed to be contagious, yet the original carrier is completely fine and 6 other people have come down with the illness. So basically he calls in the CDC, Center for Disease Control, who then quarantine the club, get warrants for basically the forced quarantine of Prue, Piper, and Phoebe and they put them all in the same room together, which is convenient for the plot. And basically they're to them, then of course Piper falls ill and he again is shocked by this, but then once again she has a miraculous recovery and everybody else has miraculous recovery, and he's taken a lot of their blood, which, as mentioned, he is a recurring character, and we will speak more about him in the episode he recurs in, but basically he is a fame-seeking doctor who wants to get his name in writing in medical papers and magazines, etc., etc. And he is the primary care doctor for Piper when she comes in with her disease, and that is worth 2 points. Next up is a bit of a doozy. So this episode had a lot happening. So we have our multi-episode main, or our multi-season, main character developments. And there were a lot of developments. And sometimes, if they're smaller developments, I'll lump them all under the same points. But in this episode, there were multiple life-changing, series-altering developments that occurred. And in my opinion, I would be doing it an injustice if I did not give the points to all of them because they each of these developments do deserve the points individually. And do I wish that they had maybe been spread out throughout more episodes? Yes. But is this a type of episode that gives people the push to want to change their lives within the series? Also, yes. So I understand why they put it all within one episode, but that just means that this episode is heavily skewed in the positive points because each of these are worth 4 points each. So we first, of course, have Phoebe, now a college student. She has made a life-altering decision to go back to school so that she can get employed, as she has been either unemployed or single episode employed throughout the series. So that is worth 4 points. Then we have the fact that Prue astral projects on command for the first time, and not only that, astral projects long distance from the hospital all the way back to the attic. Big development and growth in her powers, and that is worth 4 points. We then have Leo going against the elders and healing Piper in secret, or what he thought was secret, when she was about to die. And as a consequence of this, his wings get clipped. He is now immortal, and he is now in competition with Dan for her affections, which is another 4 points. And then we have one more Prue development in that at the end of the episode, she quits her job at Buckland's and has now become unemployed. Once again, life altering. And that is again worth 4 points, which brings us all the way up to 19 so far, and we still have a few more positives to go. So the next 4 points is our world building. And this is the fact that while it becomes quite common later in the series, as I've mentioned before, I always like to call out the milestone of the first time that they do something. And this is the first time where they call for Leo and he hears them and comes, which it's the first time they've tried to contact him that way. Previously, they were just waiting for him to show up, and he took the initiative to show up. So this is the first time where we see them summoning their white lighter through yelling his name out into the air and hoping that he hears them, which he did. And then kind of more of an honorable mention. It's kind of foreshadowing the future. And we have mentioned how Dr. Curtis Williamson took a lot of their blood. It is also mentioned by Phoebe that, like, she wonders out loud, essentially, whether or not there's anything different about their blood because they are witches. And this, I feel, is like a foreshadowing moment. Not worth any points, though, but I felt it was worth calling out. And that would be falling under the world building category. We then, our final positive is our main relationship development. And this, of course, is the fact that Leo is mortal now. The only reason, really, the only real conflict in the relationship at the time that it ended between Piper and Leo was the fact that he was a white lighter, that he was always busy, and that they couldn't find time to be together. And when they could be together, it was more work related with regards to their job as witches, and it just didn't feel right anymore, and that is why they broke up. But now he's a mortal man, no longer a white lighter. That one blockade, that one hindrance, that one reason no longer applies. So Leo comes to the club as a mortal and basically says to Piper that he had always hoped that should something like this happen, that he would have a second chance with her. She initially declines him, saying like she's with Dan now. And Leo says that he understands, and like he knows that she's with Dan and he understands it. But now that he is immortal and they have a potential chance, that he is going to fight for her. Even though she's with Dan, he's going to enter the competition essentially, and may the best man win. Which, again, as we're rewatchers, we know their end game, so we're rooting for them, even though we do like Dan. Dan is very sweet, Dan was by Piper's side the entire time that she was ill. He was crying right along with the sisters. When he comes running in and they're not telling him her room right away, he even says that he's family, so he's in it with the relationship. I'm not counting that as development because we've already known that from previous episodes. But even though Dan is such a great guy, and we do like Dan, because I know Leo and Piper are going to be endgame and they get their happily ever after, I just feel like I'm always going to root for Leo because I know he'll win, and why wouldn't I root for the winner? Duh. Anyways, point being, I'm thrilled that he's back in the game. So that's a 4-pointer. Which brings us up to 27 in positive points, and I just don't think that even if every negative applied, I don't think we would be getting anything less than a 10 out of 10 episode. But I'm still going to go over the negatives anyways, because obviously that's also worth pointing out and noting. So the first we have is, of course, character regression, which is, honestly, in this case, I kind of wish it was worth more points than just a -1, because these sisters, they do not learn. They do not learn. Ever. I'm a logic-based person, and I like to think that if I see an action and it has consequences, and I see that repeated over, you know, several instances, that I would kind of pick up on the fact that this is a pattern, this is a rule, this is maybe something we should not do. Now, to be fair, in this episode, I understand the motivation. It's their sister, she's dying. Of course, they want to save her, and of course, they're willing to risk the consequences to do so. I get it from an emotional standpoint. However, like I said, I'm a logic-based person, and they know there's going to be consequences. They have suffered consequences before. And the greater the personal gain spell, the greater the consequences tend to be. They know this very well. And yet they do it anyways. And at this point, I'm like, do you ever learn your lesson? And then I think to the future, and I realize that no, they don't. They don't. They really don't. So every time it'll be a character regression when they once again forget about the fact that there are personal gain consequences, and that those consequences will always, every single time, have them reverse whatever spell that they've done. So why did they do it in the first place? Other than, of course, the drama of the episode. Anywho, -1 point for that. Next, we have 2 negative messaging and behaviors by 2 different characters, and each of those are worth a -2 points, which only brings us down to 22. But first, of course, we have the fact that the whole reason Piper got sick in the first place is because she decided to break the law and smuggle in fruits without letting them go through their proper quarantine period because one of her workers had a connection at the docks. And you're running a business, so doing illegal things under the name of your business, probably not a great idea. Just number one. And number two, it is a criminal behavior. You are smuggling. That is against the law. So, yeah, that definitely is worth a -2 points. And then, of course, she has the whole consequences of needing to learn her lesson the hard way. Like she tells Phoebe, well, it's just fruits, it's not drugs. Yeah, okay, but it's still smuggling, still illegal. And you know what? You got bit by a sandfly, and you picked up this arroyo fever, and you almost died. So, still consequences to your actions, and not a good idea. The second negative messaging or behavior was, of course, the fact that both Jack and Buckland's, as a professional auction house business, decided to, while knowing that the painting was fake, still sell it to buyers as authentic because it came from the same time period and it was Monet's student who painted it. So why not just sell it as a Monet and make our buck? And obviously Prue's against this, but Jack's fine with it, and so is Mr. Claudwell, who is the vice president that's taken over Buckland's. And they're both willing to overlook this, which Prue isn't, and so obviously very negative messaging or behavior. Imagine being the buyer who thinks you're getting an authentic Monet, and then it ends up being nothing. And in the future, if that person then tries to sell it and they go to a reputable business that is honest in their authentication, that's their name on the line, their reputation on the line, etc., etc. So, yeah, very negative, very negative. And then we have our main relationship regression or breakup, and this, of course, is Jack and Piper. Oops, no, Jack and Prue. My bad. So, first off, when Piper is dying and Prue is very visibly upset by this, she hugs Jack, looking for comfort, saying she doesn't know what to do. She might lose her sister. And he hugs her back and then decides to tell her that I'm not great at this whole comforting people thing. Probably shouldn't come to me for that. Okay, that's pretty bad. And then, of course, there was his lack of ethics with regards to authenticating the painting and being willing to sell it as almost perfect. And if the buyers think it's real, then it's okay mentality, which obviously she had issues with. There is the fact that we have seen on other episodes where Prue and him, kind of opposites, kind of looking for different things, not really in sync with each other. And Prue basically says that while she's breaking up with him, basically says that, he's helped her to experience new things, to open herself up to new possibilities, to feel wanted and loved again, but they're not who each other is looking for, not really. They both want different things, they're in different places, and she wants to, now that she's going to have some time on her hands because she's unemployed, she wants to basically be alone for a while, re-examine what she wants, figure those things out, and therefore is breaking up with Jack. And that is the official end of the relationship, which is a -3 points. In this category, I did want to honorably mention that there is a little bit of regression in Dan and Piper's relationship because he did hear her say Leo's name when she woke up from her coma the second time. This, she and her sisters know, is because of the fact that Leo healed her. Dan, however, not knowing their secret, is not able to know that that is why she said his name, and is therefore under the impression that she said his name because she was thinking about Leo and isn't maybe over him. And I'm only honorably mentioning it because we know that there were extenuating circumstances, but it did impact their relationship. We can't pretend that's not the case, and especially with Leo back and starting this competition, that's going to be a factor in it. So I'm not taking points for it because of the extenuating circumstances, but I am mentioning it because it fits into this category. But that still leaves us with 19, and honestly, even if I had given points and took another -3, we still would have been 16. That makes it a 10 out of 10, mostly objective episode. So as a reminder, when more than one episode has the same score on our mostly objective list, we rank them just in episode order. There have been a lot of 10 out of 10 episodes in season 2 so far on our mostly objective ranking list. So in first place, as a reminder of our list so far, we have Witch Trial, The Painted World, She's a Man Baby, a Man, They're Everywhere, P3H2O, and then this episode, Awakened, is our 6th 10 out of 10 episode. And then it goes Ms. Hellfire, Morality Bites, Heartbreak City, That Old Black Magic, Reckless Abandon, and then in 12th place, The Devil's Music. So honestly, on my personal ranking, I really don't have much to say about it. That isn't already said in our mostly objective ranking. Pretty much every significant event within this episode fell into the mostly objective chart. There were tons of developments, there were tons of characters making major life-altering decisions, and all of those fell into the chart, so I've pretty much discussed everything of importance for this episode already on our mostly objective ranking list. Now, my opinion overall was that I did find it entertaining, but at the same time not perfectly entertaining, and that is why I did give it a very high score as a 9 out of 10, though it's not the, even though, like, even with everything that happened, it's not my favorite episode of the season so far. So, as a reminder of our personal ranking, my favorite episode of the season so far was P3H2O. This one does come into second with Awakened. Then we have Ms. Hellfire, Heartbreak City, Witch Trial, The Painted World, They're Everywhere, Reckless Abandon, She's a Man, Baby, a Man, The Devil's Music, Morality Bites, and then in 12th place is That Old Black Magic. Which brings us to our final segment of this video, which is our series ranking so far, which is where we're going to be comparing each of the seasons against each other. As a reminder, on our mostly objective ranking, season 1 ended with 73.18%, and season 2 so far has earned 96 points out of a possible 220. And then on the personal side, season 1 ended with 71.50%. And season 2 so far has accumulated 67 out of 220 points. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 2, Episode 12, Awakens. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.